ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Alphabetical Fugazi, the only podcast that devotes an episode each to discussing every song in the Fugazi catalog, from Fuga A to Fuga Z. I'm your host, Ian James Wright, and joining me today to discuss Burning from that first classic 1988 EP is ardent Fugazi fan Rudy Banes. Rudy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So, Rudy, when did things begin with you and this band that we both love?
Okay, well, I am 44 years old. I was born in 1976 in kind of small town Alabama, but also military base adjacent Alabama. So it definitely, there's a cycle of kids coming in and out of there that bring influences from everywhere else, get into skateboarding, so you have the skate culture and the kind of musical awareness that can go along with skate culture in a small town pre-internet. So, so of course, Fugazi was just one of many little things that seeped through that you heard in a guy's bedroom before you all go skating, that you heard in a van on the way somewhere, through friends. It was probably repeater era when I finally heard Fugazi. I was well into, punk and other things, but it was definitely Repeater was the first thing I heard. And then I thought that was an okay song. Maybe it was on a mixtape. I don't really remember hearing everything off of it. And then sometime being at a touristy beach town with a friend during spring break, because small town Alabama, there was really nothing else to do. We're 90 miles from the Florida beach. We drive down there. We're stuck in deadlock traffic, sun blazing down on a black station wagon with no air conditioning, and I'm hearing the song "Shut the Door" for the first time. A miserable, droning song to listen to in just sitting still on asphalt in a black station wagon with the windows rolled down and the sun blazing on you. I wasn't a fan that day, but I would later go back and check it all out. And of course, just lyrically get wrapped up into that world like I was wont to do with, I gravitated more toward the political punk bands that had some message. I love it all. I love the nihilists, the people who just tear it all apart. But I've just always kind of gravitated toward the more thoughtful punk that kind of started to steer me in directions in life with my thinking, with my ethics, and how I carry myself in life.
That's great. So note to self, don't put Fugazi on Hot Spring Break mixtape.
No, not a Panama City Beach banger.
Right.
especially not Shut the Door.
Would you say, I think a lot of people probably, the first album that grabbed them is the one that is their favorite to this day. Do you think your favorite would be still Repeater if you had to choose?
That's a good question because, no, I'm that way about most things. Like, I like the unpopular album of most bands because it just happens to be the one I first got into, my gateway. But for some reason, I love Repeater. But over the years, you try not to have your favorites and you try to take Fugazi's one whole catalog that can't be divided up. But I honestly, I think I always gravitate toward In on the Kill Taker. If I'm not in a full weeks-long Fugazi entrenchment that I go through sometimes, where I'm just analyzing everything.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, if it's I could really use just a dose of Fugazi real quick. It's gonna usually be In on the Kill Taker for me.
That sounds like a fine choice to me.
Repeater to me, it might be the time in life I heard it too, like kind of some, maybe times that weren't as happy for me at home and things like that. But there was a real darkness to Repeater to me that is almost it begins with I don't want to go into the other songs. You're going to cover those in other podcasts. But Repeater begins with a guy waking up in the morning. What a horrible thing to do. And then, and like we spoke about, it ends with "Shut the Door." It's kind of there's a real darkness to that album.
Yeah, true. And I think there's a lot to what you're saying about the time of life when it hit you. Sometimes I wonder, my favorite bands, Fugazi, anybody else, like if I were first introduced to them at this point in my life, would I grab onto them? Would I love them the same way? Who knows? It's interesting to contemplate. So today we are talking about Burning, one of those very early Fugazi songs. This is one that you seemed interested in. You sort of like grabbed onto it. You seemed like you had a lot to say. So I'm going to give you the first word. What's the first angle we should attack this from?
Well, you said it seemed like this was the one I was really into, really wanting to speak about. And it was just, I was trying to think of a few of their songs. And as I kind of did a fresh listen to each, and I started stream of conscious kind of writing to you, I really realized Burning, that there is a lot there I have slept on over the years. I have not explored as deeply, and it really latched on to me. It kind of, I noticed it with the music first. Of course, the way it comes in, there's a sound to it that is like fire, with that kind of ringing high guitar note he begins it with, and then lets it just keep sustaining into a wavery feedback. And then the stick clicks, kind of Brendan's, I guess he's playing off the rim, but there's a lot of high end like clacking going on, like little snips and snaps of crackling fire. And the guitar and the drums right then work together in that way that, okay, like I'm giving Burning a fresh listening to, and first thing it sounds like fire. I just thought that was really great. Maybe I'm reading into that, but then again, it made me just go on this sprint in my mind, thinking of other songs about fire where they actually tried to make the music sound like fire, like Brian Eno's "Babies on Fire" comes to mind. It's a great, great song. The music tries to emulate fire. And that's kind of what I got out of the first ringing note and those stick clicks, the rim shots at the beginning of this song. I just thought that was great. And I started kind of looking into the song more on YouTube. And there's a really great clip of them in Nashville in '93. And that there's some really great footage. And that's when I realized, oh, this is that song with the iconic Ian guitar swing. The Glennie Friedman photograph. And maybe you've seen other likenesses of it, but Ian kind of has this guitar swing where he's kind of swinging the guitar away from the amp and toward the amp. You know how he kind of, and this is one of those Ian songs where he plays his amp like a theremin almost with the feedback,
Absolutely.
But this is maybe one of the ones where he has the most signature moves with his amp. Like there's you can really see it in this YouTube clip in Nashville in '93. It was just so amazing. It really was one of those live clips on the internet that really captured it. Really makes you feel like you're there. And
I'll have to get that link from you and put that in the show notes. That sounds great. Yeah, the opening, that's really interesting what you say about the sound of the song mimicking fire. I don't think I really thought of it that way, but it's interesting because listening to fire, there's such a lot of interesting sounds going on. I don't think I've sat down and just sat in front of a fire and listened for a long time, but yeah, for the high-pitched guitar part, there are these moments like just listening to a fire where there's like steam escaping from inside the wood or something and makes this high-pitched hiss. There are a lot of interesting things like that happening. And that the beginning, well, I guess it sounds to me like there are two guitars double-tracked with each other in the studio recording, and it really makes the most of those. They sort of like are going in and out of tune with each other, and that's something that you're right. When Ian does it live, he's facing his amp, swinging the guitar back and forth, which I guess is both sort of modulates the the feedback volume, but also when he swings his guitar like that, it's like the actual pitch of it is changed by just, I guess, him, pressing the neck is bending, the strings are bending a little bit.
Yeah.
Not a ton, but enough to get that sort of chorusy almost effect happening.
I wish I could show you this moment. There is a very iconic photo of Ian where his guitar, he's facing his amp, but his body is twisted and his guitar is like almost behind his back sideways.
Yeah.
And it's this song, and he makes this motion like he's chopping at the side of the amp with an axe or something. And it's the second time the guitar comes back to doing a feedback thing in the song, and it's when it's really wavery, and you see in this clip like, oh, this is that song. And maybe most times you see that photograph, they're playing Burning, because it's just such a key point to how it gets played. And you can look up other clips and it's always the same. Like he has a very certain way of motioning the guitar toward his amp in the beginning, and then when he hits that part with the big swing, it's the same. It's it's like a fretboard. It's not accidental. He's not just in the moment. He is very in the moment, but he is not just in the moment every night. He knows he has to do those movements the same, just like you would have to finger a fretboard the same to get the same notes. And it's really quite amazing.
They were such a fascinating band to watch live. The physicality of their performance was always just thrilling, and that's why they didn't need fancy stagecraft or weird light displays or anything like that. It's just fascinating to watch them, and it's not like, as you say, it's not window dressing. I mean, part of it is just them feeling the music, but part of it is just how they executed some of these sounds. So fascinating, both from an audience perspective and as like a musician trying to figure out how they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and you mentioned seeing them live. This got me back to thinking, listening to the song with fresh eyes and thinking about it. There was one time where the song did kind of stand out to me a little bit when I saw them live in '99. It was in Atlanta. It was a really awful show for them, and I'm really glad I got to see them again the next night in Athens to see a really amazing show of theirs. I got to see the show that is overrun with meatheads there to beat people up. Then I got to see a show that's just a packed house of appreciative people that Fugazi played 3 hours for. It felt like 3 hours. I know we went over 2. It was quite amazing. So in '99 in Atlanta, kind of the bad show, I remember when they began Burning, I had never, I don't want to say I've never paid attention to the song. I had never gotten locked into this song where I'm listening to this one on a loop because I have to hear what they're doing in that one part or something like you do with other songs. But when I saw them live playing it, Guy did this thing, and it kind of segues into stuff I want to talk about Guy, especially the songs where he is not playing guitar. He has that slinky shimmer. He's kind of the Mick Jagger of sensitive hardcore boys. He's just, he's so amazing to watch. He just really emotes with his body. And it couldn't be more clear to me than when I finally saw them live and I saw this song, because and I don't know if I'd already gotten an inkling of what they're like live. I can't remember if I saw them or saw the film Instrument first. But it was around the same time. And just when they attacked this song, it begins with the line, "There's something acting on this body." And when he said that, he kind of hit himself in the belly a little bit, and he pulled at his shirt, and his shirt pulls up and you see him a little bit. And it just, that is such a good, clear example of Guy and his singing style, his lyric style, and his stage presence. Just, it's about his body, and not in a vain way. But he emotes, he uses his body, he attacks his body. So many of his lyrics are about things that are happening to his body.
Yes.
And this song, there is something acting on this body. Yeah, I mean, just right from the beginning, and he uses his body live when he says it to just show you, and that's when you're pulled into that wonderful just physical world of Guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of that first line, to me, it seems like that's a reference to Newton's laws of motion, right? Each of which talks about what happens when a force acts or doesn't act on a body. And of course, in the laws of motion, it's not necessarily talking about a human body, but he's sort of playing on that, I guess. Unless it's completely unintentional, I don't know. But yeah, just the wording of that acting on this body says that to me.
Yes. Okay. I've been, it's funny. We should have had a pre-conversation so that like my mind doesn't get blown and I'm like, oh, well, now I don't want to say what I thought.
Blowing people's minds live is the name of the game.
But if you don't mind, I actually started really looking into this whole Guy and the body connection.
Yeah, please. This is just the podcast episode I just recorded. I think I made a comment on this. So yeah, please speak on this because it's a motif I've definitely noticed coming up again and again with Guy.
Yeah, and if you don't and going back over this song, to talk about it, I kind of touch on the song and then come away from the song. I'm prepared to talk about the song at length, but I just in the very beginning of reviewing this, I realized you really have to talk about Guy and his body. Well, the way he uses his body, his reference to his body, his concern for his body, how grotesque he can make bodies lyrically too. And just when he says it too, he says it with this almost punchy disgust. He says the word body in the song the line comes out like somebody who is spitting, but not spitting like, oh, let me just spit real quick. It's like I'm spitting at you with disgust. There's something acting on this, and just that pause and boom, and it just forces out suddenly, just at you. So thinking about Guy and his physical, I don't know what we want to call it, awareness world that he writes about. I had to pause from reviewing this song to look at every one of Guy's lyrics and note which ones he mentions something happening to a body, a sickness with a body, or just somehow touches on his body. And in my list, I came up with Bad Mouth, Burning, Give Me the Cure, Two Beats Off, Dear Justice Letter, Cassavetes, Rend It, Target, Guilford Fall, FD, Life and Limb, and Strange Light. And I think those are in chronological order.
Right.
And I left out songs where there's still a grotesqueness, a very physical description of things that happen to bodies, but they're about assaults or smallpox given to people. So I don't think those should be on the list. That's a separate thing altogether, but it was still running across those type of lyrics. You know what I mean? But then okay, this doesn't belong in the list of what's happening in the Guy's body.
Yeah. Sometimes it's encapsulated by something I remember in the song Fell Destroyed. I remember, reading the lyrics to that and looking up the word coprophagic. But yeah, I just remember looking that up and being like, oh, that's such a Guy thing. He's just sort of dropping that in there. It's just one of those a sliver of body horror, the idea of that act.
Sure. And that's another song entirely. So anyway, in reviewing Burning, it really, I was kind of like, oh, this is another one of those songs where it's not really exactly about that. Especially as much as the next song on the album, Give Me the Cure, where it's very graphic about dying and licking the side of dying. And there's usually lips and mouths involved with Guy too. A lot of
and in this song, the song is no exception.
Cutting my mouth up. But if you would like, getting into I mean, unless you wanted to talk more about the musicality of the song, or
No, we can do that later and hit the lyrics first.
their lyrics can be quite cryptic. But I had a good time the last few days, really looking over and over this and really thinking about it. And I'm glad I had that opportunity. It hit me again. It hit me in a new way. I'm still taking guesses as to what this song may be about, but the way it is connecting with me now, and I think that the band would allow that agency, because they have said the lyrics are printed. They're just enough for you to put them to your own story, maybe, if you will, or figure it out for yourself. But I kind of feel like maybe, I don't know if it's his place in music or his place in the country that he is speaking of in the song, where something is acting on him. There's information coming in, but it's not going out. Like, I feel like maybe a political speech, or just, it could be dull, hardcore shows where anthemic things are being fed to him, but he's not registering it. He is not. It's not computing with him, and therefore he can't spit back out a regurgitation of that, chanting along with it. He can't. He just does not identify, and so I don't know if that is what begins the burning sensation in his eyes. I don't know where that comes from, but then it really hit more home with me. I found the second verse something I really kind of kept going over and over, that gave me the sense of what I just talked about, because of the I wanted a language of my own. When you get into punk or politics, like, sometimes you're looking for another way to voice something. Or perhaps there's something in you, and people can look for religion in this same way, where you're feeling like you need to connect with something, but you're not sure exactly what that is. And so maybe you go check out a church or a political rally or a rock show or something, but maybe it's not happening. My lips sucked empty. I mouthed the lines of this crowd that surrounds me. But then followed by punctured and parceled, I fold my hand. It feels like you're giving yourself away enough of that, but you're not feeling fulfilled by it. You're punctured, you're parceled. Anyway, so those were some of my thoughts. Tell me what you were feeling about this song.
So yeah, I think my interpretation really ties into that. So to me, the song's like a very modernist statement, and I mean that in the formal sense of the word, where so modernism is an art movement, not only in music, literature, but also the visual arts, everything like that. Sort of came around during and after World War I, and like this really common theme in modernism is this anxiety, this sort of self-consciousness about the things that came before you, and wanting to break away from those traditions. So I see a lot of that in this song. I wanted a language of my own, so sort of the language that he's used to is so full of cliche. That's part of it, like a statement on feeling that everything's been said, that you're forced to speak in this language of stock phrases, when what you want is to speak in this new and fresh and vital way. So yeah, my lips were sucked empty, and I mouthed the lines of this crowd that surrounds me. So just the way we go around, it makes me think especially of like working in an office and these sort of like stock office phrases you use, just this jargon, instead of speaking sort of authentically, directly your experience. It sort of warps and perverts the use of language a little
diminishes. Bit. It actually diminishes. It becomes less and less, to where you just have those awkward things that people do in the hallway where you just raise your eyebrows like, yep, here we are.
Right. And yeah, so to bring in something from that, maybe the most famous modernist poem is T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. And to quote a little bit from that, because this was reminding me of that, it says,
wow, yes.
"What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats, and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water." So it's this, it's sort of this evoking, like this parched desert landscape. There's nothing to nourish you anymore. It's all been sort of sucked up by the art that's come previously. And in the poem, people have interpreted the poem in various ways, I guess, but definitely the poem as a whole invokes a lot of imagery of water and the lack of water, as like the lack of water is this symbol of choking stagnation. And there's just a lot of fire and water contrast. In fact, the third section of the poem, I was rereading it after, it struck me when I was looking at the lyrics here. The third section of the poem ends with the repetition of the word burning. So I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot of cross-pollination here, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was leading me also to, back to the first line. There's something acting on this body. Something goes in when nothing comes out. Like it's talking about the thing that's acting on this body is like the influence of prior arts, like literature, songs, whatever. And, it goes in, but like nothing comes out. I'm trying to force out some kind of artistic statement. But I've got this, it's like a classic writer's block sort of sentiment, I guess.
So wow. Okay. So we were on like a similar trajectory of different lives. Like,
yeah,
I was taking the political or even musical, as far as like, if you were to go to a show and you just see this, like, this music is acting at you, on you, but you're not really, you're kind of over this now. You want something a little new, something your own.
Well, yeah, that, and I was also thinking maybe it could be his experience being in bands, in Fugazi and before Fugazi.
Well, and that's a little bit why I went that direction, is because, Discord being such an insular scene, and like, all those, like, not that every one of those bands have to write lyrics in the same way, but like, a lot of those Minor Threat songs were just about his friends, his community. Mm-hmm. and all that. And I feel like some of the Rites of Spring songs probably were too. So yeah, I just kind of, when I was thinking about, and maybe I'm putting too much into it because of, being a fan and only reading snippets, maybe over the years you've built this mythos of them, and that whole Revolution Summer thing of like burning down the old. Mm-hmm. and there you go, burning, but getting rid of the old, starting something completely new, like maybe that's like I was putting a little too much of that into this, because the song would have been written maybe 2-3 years later. So
yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. The song is interesting because the refrain is a question, and that, of course, what is this burning in my eyes? It's like it's inviting you to supply an answer. So I guess the question is this song like some kind of riddle? It wants you to answer that, or is it supposed to just be left unanswered? Is it supposed to just evoke this sort of nameless sensation that maybe we've all felt and we can't put our finger on it?
And as you're telling me, of course, in preparation of the podcast, I have the lyric page open in front of me from the booklet, and the very next song is "Give Me the Cure," mm-hmm. And so he's asking you, the listener, what is this? What is this happening? Give me the answer. The next song is "Give Me the Cure," but also I think we should talk about. Can you, as pre-internet, everything on shuffle, checking out songs one at a time kind of thing, is this one of, and this happens a couple times with Fugazi, are these one of those two song sets you cannot separate in your mind? Like when you hear the last note of Burning, don't you automatically hear the opening of Give Me the Cure, that slight little, but dun, 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 dun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't think, not this as much as some other Fugazi songs. Like, I mean, Suggestion into Glue Man comes to mind immediately for that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Guilty.
Oh, see, yeah. I always think of Long Division and Runaway Return. I can never separate.
Right.
Like the last note and then the da-na-na, da-na-na, you know? So I've always kind of, Burning and Give Me the Cure were like, I almost can't have one without the other, sort of. Like,
yeah, I feel that.
And not like they mean the same thing to me, or I think they're sister songs. They just, I've heard since I was a teenager, those two songs back to back, that if I hear Burning and now I don't hear the other, it's going to be in my head all day. You can play Burning for me, and now I'm going to have the opening lick of Give Me the Cure in my head all day.
Something that I think is a sister song to this, thematically at least, is Furniture, which is, you know, another one of those very early Fugazi songs, because I mean, just the, and that's of course an Ian song, but he's talking about being full of thought already written, and you know, just like you know, the last line of Burning, don't you know what I mean? And then in Furniture, he's saying, you see my mouth, you see that it's moving, I think you already know where I'm coming from. So they're both sort of talking about this difficulty of communication, maybe difficulty of
is that words, or no, this is the song with no words,
right,
no one can hear the missing, absolutely. I just was rewatching Instrument and preparing to talk to you, and made that connection myself when I saw that, because that's one of the ones they feature, and they put a little bit of the lyrics up on the screen, and there's definitely that connection. I've seen lyrical connections to other songs besides the body thing. Speaking of connections between this that remind you of songs that maybe Ian sings, is the Punctured and Parceled, I Fold My Hand. Ian is someone who I think is constantly focused on being divided up. Long Division, things fractured, divided. Birthday Pony, he made all these accounts, all these separate accounts, so he could divide himself up, but now the pattern takes all these, losing control. All this. Ian is very hyper. Break. and you know what? With him as an archivist, a cataloger, he is always dividing things up in his life and putting them here and putting them there, and now I parcel this here. But in this song, I see where, but this song kind of reminded me of Birthday Pony a little bit, in the way that you've been so filled with different holes from taking yourself apart, or something acting on you. You have no control anymore. It's breaking you down. You are too divided up. You're too punctured. The Punctured and Parceled, I Fold My Hand really sent me to thinking about other songs, but then I realized, all those songs are sung by Ian.
Speaking to take the conversation about other songs way outside Fugazi, when I was thinking about the chorus to this song, and I was thinking, well, is this burning an eternal flame? Which, I don't know, it just makes me think of that song, which as a song I like a lot. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say, I guess I wouldn't say I love it, but I do like that song.
No shame at all.
Yeah, they're both just songs, like the central line is asking, like, what is this burning, kind of. I don't know, just funny to me.
Okay, gosh, now you're going to send me on, because there always has to be a third, right?
Well, yeah, it was making me think of that, but I don't know.
What's the other song where someone's asking what's being burnt or burning? Who put out the fire? The Monarchy. Who put out the fire? There you go.
Yeah. Well, like, we didn't start the fire. It's sort of like saying, well, you know, who did?
Yeah. Well, who did? It's going to lead to the next question. Go ahead. Okay. Musically, though, getting back on track with the musically, you mentioned kind of the sound of it, kind of likening to other songs, and going back on this, I kind of really also realized with all that feedback and the wavering and everything, it really it's almost a psychedelic song for Fugazi. There's just a real sprawlingness to it and I tried to start thinking, okay, what are some of their other songs that, like, have this sprawling feedback that can really get psychedelic at moments, and I really, this song made me want to go listen to Floating Boy off In Hits. Just a real sprawling, stretched out song. Again, oh, you know what? Full circle. I think that song, Floating Boy, is about riding in a hot car with no air conditioning. The sun came out, sun came up, burned the shit out of our behinds, that kind of.
Surely this has no connection to your first experience with Fugazi, this interpretation.
No,
Interesting.
I just realized full circle. Yeah, no, yeah. He, because I'm sure he was writing a song about my experience. No, I'm just kidding.
I think you're right about the psychedelic connection.
If you listened to, like, if you, I'd say maybe made a 7-inch of Burning and then Floating Boy on the B-side and gave it to someone that had never heard Fugazi, they would think it's a psychedelic band, probably.
Yeah.
This song Burning lacks any. One thing I noticed that maybe set it apart a little bit, especially on this first EP, is it kind of Joe holds it down with a very hardcore chugga chugga riff. It doesn't have any of Joe's kind of laid back reggae.
Yeah, it's so chunky, right? It's
so it kind of it already sets the tone for being a little bit different, and then it's not a guitar driven other than feedback at first. It's all what would be the guitar riff is being held down by Joe.
And then Ian joins him after he finishes his feedback thing. So they're both playing this big caveman riff. It made me think of maybe doom metal. I'm not a metal guy, so please forgive me if I'm confusing the genres. I know there are so many and it's hard to keep track.
I won't try to correct you because I would be very wrong.
But it makes me feel like, I mean, of that kind of metal that I have listened to, like Dope Smoker by Sleep, for instance, it has just that kind of feel to me. It's so heavy, chunky. It's sort of simple, descending. I don't know. It's hard to describe the feel of it.
No, I know what you mean. That there is I enjoyed going back and revisiting this song and really analyzing it and learning that this is quite a different Fugazi song, but also indicative of other Fugazi songs. But yeah, Joe not playing kind of a more I don't know if reggae is the right term in his style, dub, something, but and not that he strictly adheres to that, but he brought a lot of that to Fugazi. He made them very funky, and in this song, he's bringing the aggro rock in this song, and then you have all that sprawling feedback. Yeah, it's just kind of a different song.
I think this is a good place to bring in some comments from social media, which I went to the listeners of this podcast online, and a commenter named St. John Mason says, "I'd quite like to know how they got that bass tone. Obviously Joe is key, but was it double or triple tracked?" Interesting. I was listening to that. So yeah, Joe is playing chords in this one. Right?
Yeah, I was wondering if he was playing power chords.
Yeah, it sounds like he's playing power chords, and I couldn't find a ton of clips live of them playing this live, but it seems like he's getting very much sort of the same kind of sound when they play it live. That doesn't mean it couldn't have been also doubled up in the studio. But side note, I was Googling Joe Lally Burning, trying to see if there's some kind of good clip of him playing it, and up came this a film called, the name of the film was Burning, by a filmmaker called Joseph Lally. Just thought that was weird.
Oh wow. Interesting.
But anyway, yeah, Sam Kirby was saying something that you were saying, right? For a band that didn't do drugs, they could be a little psychedelic at times. They probably recognized those bands as a serious influence on punk. Yeah, definitely sounds like we're agreed on that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you could. Yeah, I don't think that there is a sound necessarily that has been made in music. I'm not not a straight edge person. I'm not I'm not a drug advocate. I'm not a straight edge person. Mm-hmm. I don't speak for a drug company. But no, I think that their influences are wide and far, and I think that there's probably a good bit of that psychedelic skate rock in Ian, from the 70s. I think they can definitely get there with or without the drugs, and I mean, I'm not bad mouthing that guy's comment. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. And yeah, I mean, given how deeply they are influenced by reggae and dub, I mean, obviously a lot of people who did do drugs had a lot of influence on them. So yeah, those two can go hand in hand. One more comment, Oliver Kogod, he says, I'm guessing you were planning on talking about it, but the clear hits of Brendan's Farm Bell, in addition to the song's drum beat, I think are of note. So yeah, this is one of those songs where Brendan's bell is right out in front, and I love that. I've spoken about that in a previous episode. I also wanted to bring up, just his drum beat.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just want to say in his drum beat, there's this part where he does like a double hit on the kick drum, this like little stutter, and it always sounds almost like it's a mistake.
Yeah, I think I know the part you're talking about. There is a like a stumble for a second. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so good. And this is one of those clear as day. There it is, that bell. And rewatching Instrument, I'm so surprised that I didn't see more of that in the underground music scene. I'm surprised that I didn't see, more kids ripping off the bell. Having the bell in their set and touring
Absolutely.
With the bell. I really can't believe for how many covers of Waiting Room and Merchandise I've heard, proving that everyone listens to. I'm surprised more kids did not take on that bell and I got the bell just like Brendan, or maybe some did and got made fun of right away. I don't know.
I don't know, man. Drummers, maybe they just can't find the one with the right tone, and they're very picky about it. I don't really have any experience playing drums, but just watching drummers and all the different kinds of cymbals there are, I get so lost. I'm like, I don't understand how these two symbols are different and how you'd use them in a different way. But drummers, they've got this taxonomy in mind of what kind of non-drum pieces of equipment are used for what. So I don't know.
I think in the early 90s, around the time that I noticed kids starting bands and being really into Fugazi and stuff, I think you had a lot of people also getting too many things with their drum kit, like the cage that has the everything from the gong down to the splish cymbal. And then that started to phase out. And then there was this late 90s, tiny jazz kit core going around, that was really neat. Everything was sleek and so pared down, and they would put their cymbals so close to the other drums, down low, that they're not raising their hand up high to write it. Maybe that was just pendulum swinging back and forth, but I'm so surprised that I never saw another person with the bell, the classic, Mariner's ship bell or whatever.
Yeah, if I did become a drummer, I would be in serious danger of adding that to my kit and really biting Brendan's style. So maybe it's better.
See, that's what I mean. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was out of embarrassment. Everybody's going to call me, tell me I'm ripping off.
Yeah, hey, what's up, Fugazi boy?
Yeah, exactly.
Gonna play Waiting Room?
Two on the nose.
Yeah.
Two on the nose. But I'm surprised they didn't start a whole genre of bellcore.
I think at this point, Rudy, I will ask you to join me in the segment that we call Ratings. to give both your final word on the song Burning and if you could rate it out of 5 stars in the context of the Fugazi catalog. What do you think?
I would say that there's a before and after. I know that's not fair to you, so I'm gonna give it a 4 or 4.5 even.
Ooh.
But here's the thing: I wouldn't have given that before if you had just asked me, and last week if you had said, "Hey, rate the song Burning compared to the rest of their catalog," I would have maybe said a 2.5, 3. And that's not that it's a bad song. I'm comparing it to the entire Fugazi catalog. But knowing you're going to talk about it on a podcast and then reviewing it and analyzing it and watching some real amazing live footage of it, this is one of the best Fugazi songs in the end now. This is a 4.5, I think.
Okay.
I am turned around at having analyzed this. And so there you go.
I will allow the dual ratings. There are no rules for this segment. Some people refuse to do it entirely. If you want to give 2 different ratings, that's fine. I'm open to it. For me, yeah. I think this one's coming down sort of right in the middle at a 3-star rating. I see it as sort of one of those pre-evolved Fugazi songs. Like my favorite stuff.
Do you do a 3.5, a 4, or are you just solid round numbers? Or
I do halves.
I want to know if this is a 3, like.
No, I think it's right down the middle.
Wow.
It's not my favorite style, but of the early years, I think it has to sort of grab me in the right way to really put it over the top. But obviously there is a lot to like about it. So yeah, I think I'm settling on 3 for this one. Got to make tough decisions with these ratings, you know.
I'm gonna send you some YouTube clips that I think are gonna pull this to a 3.5. And
I reserve the right to go back and edit me eating my words into this. So yeah, none of this is written in stone. These are just my current impressions.
I want to hear you give your rating, and then suddenly, like it's like cavernous audio with a baby crying in the background, and 3.5, and then
I will. You can assign me to write "Burning" is an awesome song, 100 times on the chalkboard or something, and I'll we'll see if I capitulate to your judgment.
Yeah. Ian, before we go, do you mind if I just speak just a little bit about Fugazi, just a little more as far as like their place in my life?
Please go ahead.
Okay, because I was so excited and rushed at the beginning and was like, don't go on and on. This guy wants to talk about the song. And but, as far as discovering Fugazi, I don't think I gave it, I feel bad now at what I said at the beginning. I don't think I gave it its due. I was like, oh yeah, it kind of sucked. I was in a station wagon. It was not good. But but that is to say, like, there was a slow checking out into it. And then over the years, kind of more the punk that stuck with me, like I said earlier, was the political punk. And I think like a lot of ardent Fugazi fans that, are still analyzing this band well into their 40s or whatever age, let's just say since the 90s or 80s even, because, their first one was 88. So, but, it definitely is has meant a lot to me in my life. I know their lyrics aren't overtly political necessarily. It's cryptic. You don't read a Fugazi lyric book and then okay, well, I'm gonna go support this issue and that issue. But I will say they have fallen into that punk realm for me of like they kind of guide my life, my ethics, my being a state employee, how I go about my duties in looking out for the people of Alabama and the decisions I make. I think a lot about like my punk heroes. I think about what would they do? What is the best decision I can make that really works for the people, that brings the people up? Even just every little decision in life, when you really kind of get into the political side of punk, and it shapes your ethics. It really starts to play into every decision. And these people are just, kind of your heroes in a way, but also just guideposts. Like I can't go shopping without thinking of Fugazi's merchandise sometimes, or even there's a Crass song and even a Citizen Fish song I think about when I go shopping. It's just, this band has been so much to me in life. I'm really glad that you're doing this. I'm glad to know there are other people like me who took this in, and it was more than just the aggressive music. It was more than just the slam dancing. It was a guide to how to start to build yourself as a person, and how are you going to behave in this world and treat others and treat the world, and what kind of world are you making, and are you questioning yourself every day and everything you do, and are you getting further toward making that world that these people fire up in you to want?
That's very well said, and I think it's safe to say you have a kindred spirit in me and probably a lot of the people listening to this show. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you for bringing us all together in this way.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's definitely a pleasure so far. So let's do a quick bit of plugs. I don't know if you have anything sort of coming up you want to plug, or if you just want to let listeners know where they can reach you online or whatever, anything like that?
Well, again, my name is Rudy Banes, and you can... I had a band called the Rudy Banes Shutdown, and that stuff is all on Spotify and Bandcamp and YouTube. And then I just loaded it yesterday, and I'm waiting for it to all hit on the internet. But the follow-up band to that was the Rudy Banes Breakup, and that, which, because the Shutdown broke up and I had a show to play in a month and a half, and I got with the most explosive drummer I knew, and I said, we have a month and a half to write at least 20 minutes of music, and we did, and we played that show, and we continued, and but that was years and years ago. But that's finally going to be online real soon. The Rudy Banes Shutdown and the Rudy is already online, and the Rudy Banes Breakup is coming. I'm really proud of that stuff. I'd love everyone to go check it out. And then I'm out there on other media as just Rudy Banes. Oh, and I was in a movie once, kind of a horror. I don't know why they call it horror. It's more thriller. It's not like what's the difference between like serial killer and monster movie? But this one's the serial killer kind of horror movie, and it's called Death to the World, and I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, what do you play?
And that I play a character that will surprise you.
Okay.
And it was made here in Montgomery, Alabama, by my friend Shane Gillis and Rick Gardner. Shane being also a gigantic Fugazi fan.
Cool. Well,
and it got taken off of Amazon for just a little while because of Shane Gillis, the director, having the same name as Shane Gillis, the guy who was fired from SNL before he got on SNL this past season. And Shane's movie coincidentally came off Amazon and then was added back in.
It's cool. Well, I'll put that stuff in the show notes, and I'll check it out myself. Thanks very much for sharing that, and thanks for being on the show. It's been a pleasure. So, listeners, as for me, you can reach me at fugaziatoz@gmail.com. And, of course, you can join the Facebook group, the Alphabetical Fugazi. Let us know what you think about burning. And I hope you'll join me for the next episode when we'll be discussing, you guessed it, Burning 2. Until then, keep your eyes open.